Hello dear heart, and welcome to this video. Biohacking through BreathHolds. So in the previous video, I spoke about how breathwork is a tool for biohacking, and a lot of breathwork modalities includes BreathHolds. Now, the most common ones are either 𝗵𝗲𝗿𝐁𝐾 or 𝐵𝐴𝗿𝐁𝐾. And this simply means that you are either holding or retaining your breath while your lungs are full, 𝗵𝗲𝗿𝐁𝐾, or while your lungs are empty, 𝐵𝐴𝗿𝐁𝐾. There's also 𝗱𝗲𝐿𝐵𝐿 and 𝗍𝗲𝐿𝐵𝐿, but these are not really relevant to this video, so I'm not going to explain them and go into them. In this video, I will share interesting findings about BreathHolds from different perspectives. When we pause the breath, we are pausing the oldest organic clock that existed long before time was invented. The rhythm of our breath is the true clock of life. When we pause this clock, amazing things start happening. When we pause this clock mindfully, with conscious awareness, I have to add that. The first thing I want to bring to attention is intermittent hypoxia. This is where the blood oxygen drops below 85% for really short periods of time, intermittently. This has been shown to offer benefits to the body, the mind, the spirit, and the body responds by building resilience faster. There has been studies that shown the science behind altitude training and intermittent hypoxic training. So at high altitudes, the amount of oxygen available for consumption is much less. So when you are putting your body under stress via exercise, running, lifting weights, resistance training, all of these things, the body has to start utilizing energy in a different way. So it has to start utilizing the oxygen that is available, the carbon dioxide that is available. All of these things have to start operating optimally, and no endless roads. It has to be a direct road, or even in a different way than just the oxygen. So quotation here, in order to compensate, a protein called hypoxia inducing factor HIF1 sets off a host of reactions. These reactions are geared towards improving the body's ability to utilize oxygen. You might be asking, what is intermittent hypoxic training? So let me give you a quotation or a direct definition of what intermittent hypoxic training is. Intermittent hypoxic training session consists of intervals of several minutes of breathing in low oxygen, low air, alternated with intervals of breathing ambient, so normonoxic or hyperoxic air. And I can put it into more simplistic terms here. You are breathing deeply and faster pace, over oxygenate your body for a period of time, and then you hold your breath to drop the oxygen levels of the body to a really low state. So it's over oxygenation, depriving oxygen, over oxygenation, depriving oxygen. So some of the reported benefits include, but they are not subjected to, an increase in blood flow to the brain, improved cognitive functions, it prevents dementia and also neurodegeneration, which means it improves neuroplasticity. It increases the adaptability and endurance of the person. It also reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. It improves the production of red blood cells from our bone marrow. It boosts and it regulates the immune system that is found all over the body, not just in one location. And there are so many more benefits to this, but those are just a few. And from my personal experience, it has really helped me to regulate my moods and the chemical balance in my brain, while also offering clarity of mind. It has helped me to regulate my nervous system, to create a nervous system variability that's really high. I haven't heard anyone talk about nervous system variability, but I use that because heart math has brought up heart rate variability. Nervous system variability is the same thing. It responds and reacts quickly. It doesn't get stuck anywhere. Now, through this deregulation of a nervous system, normally depression and anxiety is experienced for a lot of people if you have a deregulated nervous system. And before breathwork, I spent years trying to meditate, only to realize that the deep meditative levels breathwork delivered me into was so quick and so easy and so effortless. And what's more is that now I can also just sit in silence and surrender into those deep states of meditation without doing breath work. So it's like it opened up a path, it opened up a doorway. And it's almost like breath work carved the path to meditation and carved the exploration of expanded states of consciousness. So let's quickly talk about the breath hold on empty or the breath hold on full. Which one? Now, both have different textures to it, but with very great benefits that merge into each other. So the thing that surprised me most is how the theory and the practicality of breath holds are very different. So please allow me to explain. Theoretically, according to science and breath holds, you can hold your breath much longer on empty than on full. There's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, it is because the signal of the breath, so the signal and the urgency of I have to breathe, a lot of people think that this is based on the oxygen level dropping, but it comes from the build-up of carbon dioxide in the body. And it's not due to the oxygen drop. So carbon dioxide plays a role, and don't get me wrong, carbon dioxide buildup is a much faster response than the oxygen levels dropping. That's why that gives the indication of when we should breathe next. The other thing is that if the lungs are empty of all the gas happening and the gas exchange happening, it means that there's enough space for carbon dioxide in the lungs once expelled to again start building up, because from the cells into the blood and from the blood into the lungs, there will still be an exchange even when you are holding the breath. So when we fill our lungs and hold our breath, there is already a big amount of carbon dioxide in the air within the lungs, and the gas exchange from that air leads to faster turnover of carbon dioxide in the body itself. Then the lungs are already expanded and full of gas exchange, and the gas exchange taking place then runs out of space to send these molecules in this air, right? So the diaphragm then tries to compress and compensate for this. So after a while, it starts pushing into the spleen and the heart rate starts changing. So technically, you can hold your breath much longer when your lungs are empty versus holding your breath when your lungs are full. And if you have ever experienced breath work, we cannot exclude the mental realm that is interconnected with the body and the breath holds. You see that when we exhale and we hold our breath on empty, the mind starts bringing forward all the programs of scarcity, not being enough, lacking, and this creates an urgency to fill that void, even if it is just with breath. Or the void is the discomfort, all the places that we don't want to hang out with. So on the exhale holds, these programs almost become palpable to the body. So the truth is, mostly, we don't hold our exhale retention as long as we are capable of doing so due to the interruption patterns that our belief system create. And that pushes it in front of our awareness. And when awareness falls asleep to those belief structures, it's going to cave into the urgency. And it's going to forget that awareness is the authority that controls the breath. But now the belief systems gets placed on top and they become the controller. So luckily this practice not only reveals this to us, but it can also become the very practice to rewire your subconscious brain and install new and more beneficial beliefs for your overall well-being. So what happens when we take breath holds into the realm of unified physics or into the quantum realm even, if you want? Before I get into breath holds, it's important for me to explain two concepts. Number one, resonance, and number two will be rhythm entrainment. So resonance is when two oscillators emit and absorb the same frequency of energy between them. The energy transfer is very easy because when two oscillators are tuned to the same frequency, they receive the energy as if it is their own. So allow me to use an example here. Let's say that two tuning forks is at the frequency of 440 Hertz. They stand next to each other, and just one of these stem forks is wrong. Both will vibrate. Both will make noise with the energy. Why? Because the acoustics is in one unit. Now, the transfer from the one oscillator to the other oscillator in a resonant system is effortless. And this highlights the saying, your vibe attracts your tribe. Now, only it doesn't attract, but it shares energy in that circuit. And it activates that resonant energy in the other oscillator too, because it's from the same frequency. Really interesting. There's a video on YouTube that you can watch too about this rhythm in the resonance system. Now, rhythm entrainment is the most economical and energy efficient way for energy to travel. Nature finds it more economical in energy efficiency to have periodic events that are close enough in frequency to occur in phase or in step with each other. Nature is always falling into the path of least resistance and energy efficiency. We don't want to take long routes. We either want a shortcut or a direct path. Sounds familiar? Okay, so some would even call it spontaneous synchronization. There's a video on YouTube you can watch about rhythm entrainment where there's these metronomes that are spun out or begun out of rhythm and they all end up in the same rhythm. So the body is also an oscillator. So when you take these two concepts to the sound of the body, things get very interesting. The heart is the biggest noisemaker within the body. Unless if you're singing or shouting. Okay, but naturally and normally, right? It's a constant beat. And each beat shakes the body from the inside. And the body has a typical response to that beat, which is quite easily measured. A seismograph instrument can measure the movement patterns that the heart has on the entire body. The largest spike is when the heart ejects blood from the heart into the aorta, the largest artery of the body. Now, here's a figure 13. and it shows you a reading. The smaller tufts and peaks are due to interference patterns. This is where the peak of one wave meets the trough of or a valley of another wave, and they diminish or cancel each other out, and what is left of that is a small little wave that you see there. Then from there, allow me to show you figure 14. Now, figure 14 is when the breath is paused. A practical sine wave pattern, right? So the reason for this is when the breath is paused. And the movements of the breath now has less interference with the other movements of the body. The amplitude is higher and more in harmony. The aorta also becomes the resonance system when the breath is retained. Everything comes back into harmony, into coherence, without interference patterns canceling each other out. Now please see figure 15. The aorta forms half of a wavelength in the system. By resonant, I mean that it is tuned, and it tunes in just like an instrument is tuned in. You can be off tone, off note, or on note. So here is what seems to be the case. When the left ventricle of the heart ejects blood, the aorta, being an elastic balloon, blooms out just because the valve, because of the pressure and the pulse to travel down the aorta, as you see in figure 16, when the pressure pulse reaches the bifurcation in the lower abdomen, which is where the aorta forks into two so that it can travel into both your legs, part of the pressure pulses rebounds back up and starts traveling back up the aorta. If this, in the meantime, the heart is ejecting more blood and the new pressure pulse is traveling down, these two pulses will eventually collide somewhere along the aorta, and it will produce an interference pattern. Now this is reflected in the movement of the body, and it's also one of the reasons for the irregular patterns in these motions of figure 13 that I showed you. However, when the breathing stops, it looks as if some communication has been set up between the heart and the bifurcation. Some kind of signal seems to travel from the bifurcation to the heart, saying to it, "Heart, hold your next pulse until the echo of the bifurcation pulse returns to you. Only then should you eject the blood." Okay? When this happens, the echo and the pulse move out of the heart together in synchronicity. And such a system is said to be in resonance. This is when the body is in its coherent state of rhythm entrainment. It causes the body to move harmoniously up and down in these wave patterns 7 times a second. So the amplitude of the height of the sine wave, the synchronicity is about 3 times the average. So it's an exponential heightening of this wave pattern without any interference patterns in between, as if we're irregularly breathing. Now, another characteristic of a resonant behavior is that it requires for its sustenance a minimum amount of energy. If this happens when we hold the breath, how do we get this to happen while breathing? So by attuning to the coherent heart rhythm, HeartMath found the coherence breath. So if you breathe in and out for 5 seconds, you synchronize this to the resonant system, and this phenomena also happens while you breathe. The brain is also part of the system. It rests in a fluid called the dura. It protects the brain from hitting the skull when we move our head up and down, shaking it, stopping. And it slows that movement down. It creates like an insulation for the brain, protecting it. And this is something we are not aware of though. When something happens to the nervous system for a period of time, and that event is not traumatic, it will not be brought to the conscious attention, because the part of the brain that is in charge of separating and sorting important signals from meaningful versus unmeaningful ones regulate this happening into the group of unimportant signals, because it's something that's not traumatic and it's something that's happening constantly, which requires no conscious processing at all. It doesn't process it because it's unimportant, so it just flows straight through. Now, the conscious processing unit of the brain and the mind is not that fast, and its storage capacity is extremely small. So this mechanism is required in order for us to still operate sufficiently in our daily lives. Again, we have to be aware, is there a car coming, in order for us to respond to that instead of dealing with things that's unmeaningful. Okay, so it helps us to get to the loud, it suppresses all these loud noises of airplanes, or it sorts memory from implicit to explicit. So we don't have to learn how to use a key to open up our house every single day. So there's benefit to these things. There's benefit to not learning everything anew every single day. Now, when we are in an airport and constant planes are flying, it's not that the noise goes away. The noise is still there, but it affects us in subtle ways or not at all. The body's rhythm entrainment is affected by light and to some extent gravitational effects too. Now, these are the most obvious ones. However, magnetism, electromagnetic, atmospheric, subtle geographical effects, all of those are also ways that we currently understand that has effects on this body. If we shake our electrical or our gravitational field, the disturbance in the environment will travel faster and further. When we still apply sound to it, although it will be a different kind, it will travel at the velocity of light. Now, we can actually associate our reality with one sound or another, because our reality is a vibratory reality. Everything is vibration and nothing is stagnant. Okay, so starting with the nucleus of an atom, which vibrates at an enormous rate of 10 to the power of minus 14. That is on a scale of 100 trillionth of a second. The electrons of a molecule, or the electrons of whole molecules, are associated with vibratory rates. How fast per second is it vibrating? How fast per second is it turned on and off, on and off, on and off? Now, the most important aspect of the matter is vibratory energy. As matter is merely vibrations compressed, it appears as solid, chair, leg, right? It appears as solid. When we think about our brains creating rhythmical electrical currents with magnetic components that spread out into space with the velocity of light due to the electrical waves and the sound produced by our hearts, they all mingle and they all form interference patterns. Everything is vibrational. It requires very little energy to drive the frequency of a resonant system. So if you are in coherence, your aura is bigger because it's easier for that resonant system to expand and to drive those waves out. Everything creates shock waves that interact with each other, from a micro to a macro level. Our reality is based on one common factor: periodic change or sound. So easy and basically, when we hold our breath, it creates a resonant system, and the energy output of such a system is amplified. This means that when you use the technology that can capture your electromagnetic field, your torus field, or your aura, after breathwork, you will see it is more vibrant with a much bigger circumference. I just want to take a moment to rewind. I want to rewind to light. Light is a really important factor when it comes to breathwork. Every time we inhale, we are inhaling about 70,000 photons per second. And we emit at least 3,800 photons per second. So when there is a lot of distortion and the system is not resonant, it will struggle to utilize light energy as the technology it is through the breath. When a system, meaning a body-mind complex, is resonant and it falls into its own rhythm entrainment, the amount of light utilized and emitted is so much more. So you literally start glowing more. This not only makes you feel enlightened, but it also literally makes you glow. Hence the term enlightened. You're stepping into your light. You're emitting more light. It's in the word. And our sense of sight can just not, it cannot see the full spectrum of light. It cannot even see the spectrum of light we emit. Yet, I have seen people glowing after breathwork in the same sense that you can pick up more light in that process. This is where the pun is intended, right? But breathwork, and when you consciously start inviting more light through your breath into your body, into your being, we can feel lightheaded too. Okay, so as a short summary, BreathHolds are very beneficial in the right set and setting when accompanied by deep mindful breathing and a pure intention. Magic unfolds. Okay, so I bring that forward to also tell you that holding your breath due to an overload of stress, anxiety, or tension without mindful awareness, it doesn't lead to the same benefits, unfortunately. But stress is not our enemy. It is not something that we should avoid or deny or push away. I hope that this video has shed some light for you on that, because holding the breath, we are putting some form of stress on the body, but in a good way, and we're removing that. So in intermittent things. What's the relationship then between stress and resilience? They're friends, but resilience has a really low tolerance. Hanging out with friends like stress for long periods of time, in short periods with prolonged care and solitude, offers the perfect breeding ground and environment for coherence to flourish. I am so grateful. Thank you so much if you made it this far in the video. I would love to hear your contemplations, your thoughts, your process. I do value your opinion here. Let me know if you like this and what else you want me to speak about. I will go a little bit deeper into the quantum realm and also playing around with the matrix, the light, go deeper into light, also go deeper into space. So when it feels like you're in a different place when doing breath work, or time speeding up or slowing down, things like that. So I'm super, super excited about this series. Thank you so much for your time, for your patience, and I bow in reverence to you. Thanks.